Welcome everyone to the Regs Committee for today. I'm going to stand to say the karakia. The rest of you can remain seated. Whakataka te hau ki te ura, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he hahu, te hei Māori ora. Thank you, everybody. We do have apologies from Pauiwi Liz and Mea Whānau for late arrival. I'm not aware of any other apologies. So I move that those be accepted. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Pauiwi Holden. I'll now put the motion which has been moved and seconded. Those in favour press 1, those against press 2. There we go. Oh, we seem to have no TAM. Komana, I declare that carried. Do we have any conflict of interest declarations? No, I don't see any. Confirmation of minutes. I've had a quick look at them online. I'm happy to move that they are approved. They have been circulated and hopefully read. I approve the minutes. I move that we approve the minutes. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McNulty. We'll now vote on that. Hold on.
You didn't attend.
Oh, okay.
I didn't attend the one. Sorry, okay, sorry. You
Komano, that's been carried.
Can I just check that the audio is working all right for people on Zoom? Because I've just had a text message saying the audio is dropping out. So,
Okay, testing now. A thumbs up, good. All right, just make sure that I'm facing the mic. Okay, so we're up to items not on the agenda. There are no items not on the agenda. But we do have public participation today, so I will now start with that and welcome, if he is present, Ian McLeod online.
Yeah, good morning.
Thank you, Ian. You have 5 minutes, or 10, as you're representing an organisation, and that needs to include questions. Do you want me to give you a signal when you're nearly at the end of your 10, or are you
Sure.
happy to manage that? Okay, I'll give you
Please.
I'll give you a wee ding on the bell when we've got to 9 minutes.
Thank you. I represent the South Coast Business and Promotions Association Incorporated. This was formed after the recent local body elections as a result of the poor representation the businesses of the South Coast got in the previous term of the council and what we expect to get in the current term of the council. You know, it is common knowledge that the so-called Wellington City Council consultations are farcical, and at most the outcomes are already predetermined. The only reason the Wellington City Council consults is because it's legally obliged to under the Local Government Act. And the Island Bay Cycleway is a classic example of the council not listening to the community despite presentations of genuine consultancy and transparency. Now, you all know I stood for Wellington South and came a dismal fourth, but unfortunately, when I went round talking to the patrons and the business owners of Island Bay, of Newtown, it came clear that their main area of concern was the cycleway. For this latest round of consultations, it's still about the contentious issue. And once again, very poorly advertised, and most businesses were not talked to, not approached by council officials. Claims were made in the officer's report, border on the preposterous, but of course it depends on who you talk to. The further loss of car parks will have a significant impact on the village shopping centre in Island Bay, and many of the clubs, especially the bowling club in Island Bay, and their after-hours activity are held along the length of the parade. And the claim that they've been consulted is absolutely ludicrous. There's never been a business case presented to the local businesses, and the residents are genuinely concerned about the council cases being put forward. None of these details have been provided, and rarely has there been significant problem and very limited with an expensive gain. We do not believe that these so-called safety improvements will benefit pedestrians, the public transport users, cyclists, and those with disabilities accessing issues, the general community of Island Bay and its visitors. In fact, we believe the proposed upgrade will be a deterrent to both visiting the shopping centre in Island Bay, and it will just be too hard to get to. Recent cases over Christmas with works downtown have showed that trading in Lambton Key has dropped off because people just can't get a car park, so they take their cars out to Lower Hutt and go to Queensgate or something like that. If you guys want to destroy the business, tell us now and we'll shut our shops up. There's never been a close look at the number of accidents or near misses that have occurred on the parade since the cycleways were installed. Genuine safety concerns have fallen on deaf ears as they did not fit the current council's objectives and the previous council's objectives to get rid of cars. And this get rid of cars seems to come at a opposite thread to what central government's telling us. We're getting paid $8,500 to buy an electric car, but where are we going to park it? So the council's objectives of removing cars from business centres is directly opposed to the Politburo's head office response that some of the councils are listening to. You know, the growth of electric cars and hydrogen's on the horizon, but where will these vehicles park? I think the war in Ukraine will do a lot to speed that transition from internal combustion to alternative sources, and we were very pleased to see that there was a drop in our carbon emission in Wellington, probably purely because of the Bustles Wellington Regional Council, which has got very little to do with the City Council. Now, the greater consequences for truly livable suburbs is that the city is being compromised at what appears to have very little consideration and a rampant ideology which has been forced down our throat from central government by council and central government appointed councillors. We'd like to see some more accountability from the council officers and the councils who are meant to represent their constituents for the poor and ill-considered considerations that are being made. One thing we would like to see and to propose is that a survey into the parallel parking on either side of Derwent Street and Ribble Street be urgently undertaken. If you take out the median strip and the trees can be relocated, these trees will be wide enough to handle the traffic on Derwent Street, and it's always been an option to install a cycleway there rather than having it on the parade in the first instance. I think that's my submission. I look forward to hearing any questions.
Thank you, Ian. And actually there are. So we've had a question from Councillor Calvert to start with.
Thanks, Ian. I've got a couple of questions. First one is, how can the council engage better with the business community? And then the second one is, you've seen the recommendations that we've got from council staff in front of us. What would you suggest we do?
I think the old-fashioned way of going around and door knocking. We got promised in my business in Brooklyn that we'd be consulted on the alterations to the Cleveland Street. Yeah, we'll come and talk to you, but nobody ever did. So it's just a case of getting out there, wearing down some shoe leather and talking to the people on the street. And this is what I did when I was campaigning in Newtown, Island Bay, and that's the feedback I got. So it's not hard. Get off your ass and do something. It's probably the direct response.
Mm. And just my second question, which was with the recommendations in front of us, what do you suggest that we should be doing?
Yeah, I'd throw the whole thing out and start again, really. That's I just don't see that there's been adequate consultation to the community on the way through.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I do have a question, Ian. There have been some changes made to the plans, and in particular, there's a bit more footpath space, for example, around where the bus stop is at the town centre. We're told by officers that that's in response to work done with businesses, and that a lot of the parking restrictions, which have been quite tailored, are directly in response to concerns of the bowling club and churches and other community groups. In your mind, how do you reconcile that with you saying that our staff haven't been in touch with stakeholders down in the Island Bay?
Well, I'd have to talk to the bowling club, but I know that the biggest concern for the bowling club is the concrete coffins parked outside their place, which stops cars getting there. So those have got to go. You have a look at cycle lanes around other cities around the country. It's just a white strip. They don't have that concrete coffin there, and it's a shared access way. So it makes it very difficult for the people. Again, I can consult with the members of the bowling club and the other communities and get back to you, but at the moment I'm not privy to that.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have a question? I'll let Councillor Calvert have another one. Okay.
Thank you. And it's really just a follow-on. I received some feedback last night that a business owner didn't believe that the widening the footpaths was going to alleviate the issues for people being able to access the local businesses. Is that something that you've been hearing too?
Yes, it's the people coming out of the suburbs in Wellington, coming down to use Island Bay as its hub. So they're coming out of the suburbs. They're not riding their bikes. They're driving down, parking their cars, doing their shopping, and going back. Whilst they're transiting around inside the suburb, footpaths are great, and I think the current footpath is adequate. It's just the ability for people to bring their vehicles out of the suburbs, Southgate and the hills around, to come down to the shops.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I don't think there are any further questions, but you've made some interesting points which we will be considering. Thank you.
Yep. Well, hopefully you can read about it in the Dominion tomorrow, because we'll get our press release out.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Do we have Margaret here? She's online as well. Welcome, Margaret. I can't see you as yet, but I'm sure you're there somewhere.
I am indeed.
You are indeed.
Hang on. I'm just getting technical here. Do I have to sign in? No, I'm already signed in.
No,
can you see me?
We can see you and hear you. And as long as you can see and hear us, that's really great. Now you have, I think you're representing an organisation, so you have 10 minutes. That does need to include questions, and we have had a few for the last submitter. So yes,
Sure.
if you could sort of leave maybe 2 or 3 minutes for questions, that's probably appreciated. Right.
Sure. Thank you for allowing time for the members of the public to speak to their submission. As you said, I'm Margaret Crispin. I work at Wellington South Baptist Church as their administrator. And as such, I represent the church and our facility users. 120 years ago, Island Bay looked quite different to what it does today. With the introduction of public transport in the form of trams around 1905, Island Bay became a fast-growing suburb. As people came and built their homes, churches were built also. The churches grew both in number of different denominations and in the number of people that attended those churches. They were places of gathering and meeting. But then, as today, the churches are also used for Sunday worship, weekly Bible studies, funerals and christenings. I wonder if the church forebears could imagine their buildings being used for the wide variety of community events where people gather and meet today. I wonder if they'd be rolling over in their graves, or whether they'd be smiling at joy for the way their buildings continue to build and enhance their tangible caring community with wellness, education and leisure. You see, having the churches in Island Bay meet for a combined worship service was unthinkable 100 years ago, and to have dancing in a church hall, well, that equally was not a happening thing. How times have changed. Today, there's various dance and exercise classes to suit anyone's style, whether it be Zumba, ballet, jazz, freestyle, yoga, ballroom dance lessons, or dancing in the dark. Our facilities are used for large public events like meet the local or central government candidates. Residents come together to discuss why they enjoy living here, imagining and actioning what could enhance their life further in this suburb. Toastmasters have had their Wellington competitions. The Island Bay community come together to learn from various experts in their fields. whether it be for medical reasons, historical, compassionate, or any other reason. Shared interest groups have get-togethers in our auditorium, whether they be for political reasons, ethnicity reasons. There's musical concerts. Combined services happen that, unheard of even 20 years ago. On-site vaccinations have happened to prepare for a pandemic. Would the forebears have envisaged other groups like Bellyful volunteers coming together to cook meals for young families on a monthly basis, birthday and engagement and extended family Christmas parties happening, various support or education groups meeting like breastfeeding classes, Plunket or Ranga Tamariki, to name a few? Our facility users are finding that public transport is becoming reliably unpredictable and irregular, and as such, it doesn't suit the majority of people. Many who might otherwise take public transport resort to bringing vehicles because they're time poor, or the services are, as I said, not reliable or when they want it. Private transport is also used when they're unable to walk very far or to cycle, or the resources they're bringing to their event requires a vehicle. Some people carpool, as finding a car park outside our church can be a lottery. Maybe the weather is inclement. I've heard no end of comments about the lack of available parking for vehicles. Each person's transport needs are as individual as they are. We have 4 bicycle stands that can hold 8 bicycles, and it's a joy to see them being used on a regular basis, mostly in summer or when there's public meetings. I've asked for the P120 parking in the 6, 9 if everyone parks to the lines outside our venue, as most facility users' events last between 1 and 2 hours. These parks will free up space between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. and also allow visits to neighbouring residents and provide space for people to park their cars for short outings using public transport. I don't know what our forebears would think of what happens today in the buildings that they financially helped to build. But what I do know is that, like 100 years ago, gathering together is important for physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health, and that accessible transport helps to facilitate gathering together at an accessible venue. I'd like to recommend that the committee proceed with option A of TR 98/22 to help provide an accessible venue for people to gather together and help create a more connected community with all the benefits that flow from being able to gather together. Are there any questions?
I have a question. So
Sure.
Thank you, Margaret. You've mentioned parking P20 from 10, was it 10 a.m. to 6 p.m? Or was it?
Correct.
Okay. I think we might have got it from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. 7 days a week.
Oh, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
But if you look at if someone parks here at 8:05, they're welcome to park to 10:05. So, was why I kind of did the 10, assuming that the residents. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so someone who parks at 6:05 is quite happy to be parked there from 8 o'clock onwards.
Oh, I see. Okay. Some of the other parts of the parade are only restricted until 6 p.m. I think yours is one of the few that's 8 p.m. Do you
Correct.
see that there could be some synergies in trying to standardise it a little bit more, just in terms of getting it a clear understanding of the community, like bringing yours back down to 6 p.m?
We originally had asked for 6 p.m. And then a lot of our facility users who rock up at 7:30 were finding that there were no parking for them, and they were parking on the footpath outside our church. So it was them that asked for, and I had asked for 8 p.m, but it was kind of lost in the translation somewhere.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, just enforcement. How important is it going to be to get this well enforced?
Where you have time restricted parking, I think there has to be enforcement has to be seen to be being done. We have Zumba meet 3 nights a week on a very regular basis, and other ones, on ad hoc basis that happen during the year. Not a lot happens over summer. a lot of it is to term times. It just depends what meeting's happening when and when it is and what meeting it is, really. I mean, our Wellington Southern Bays Historical Society, they meet 4 times a year, and they're mainly an older congregation, an older clientele that use our facilities. So it's kind of important for them to have parking.
And just one last question, because there are some others. Do you feel the officers have engaged with you? Because we've had some people say that there has not been consultation or good consultation.
To be fair, nobody has door knocked to me, but it was me reaching out when I heard that there were changes afoot to be happening to the, the parade. Okay. So it was me reaching out.
Okay. Councillor Randall.
Thank you for your comments. You mentioned the unreliable public transport services, causing people to have to take their cars. Have you any comment about, whether the council should be proceeding with further parking changes, given that the public transport service is so unreliable?
I understand. Sorry, I'm just I'm not so audio. I'm visual. I understand your question to be asking: should I be asking for changes when the public transport system is unreliable? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, I was saying, do you think it's wise for the council to proceed with further parking changes when the public transport service is so unreliable?
Oh, I hear what you're saying. It depends on how you look at the parking changes that are being offered. My big gripe as a bus user is the unpredictableness of what's being cancelled. And in the evenings, they're only every half hour, and then one of those could drop off, and then there's not another bus service for another half hour. A couple of weeks ago, we had no bus service out of Island Bay from 10:15 at night. That's kind of totally unacceptable.
Okay, thank you. We do have one last question from Councillor Abdurrahman.
Sure.
Kia ora, Margaret. And first, I would like to say thank you to you and the church for organising the candidates during election time. And
you're welcome.
And I think, as you said, the church becomes more broader and where communities come together. And I was there for another meeting where the minister was there talking about environment as well. My question to you is, as someone who, a community leader who is based in that space, how much of an impact do you think will have on the businesses? Because as you know, it's some people, they are even saying it's a good thing because people are not parking the whole day. So do you think that is an advantage for business as well?
Oh, absolutely. You've down at the parade, you've got 1 hour restrictions. Where we are, we'll have 2 hours, so that'll enable you to go to the parade. Often people might want to go into town because you can, when you use your bus ticket, you get half an hour's grace to jump on again and use that kind of same maximum 3 trip ticket. So if you're going to go visit someone in Wellington Hospital, for example, as long as you kind of visit within half an hour, then you can come back again. It I think provides an increase in business customer because the parking is for slightly longer. Otherwise, at the moment, we've got some people that park there all day and go to town because it's kind of limited parking for all day parking when they want to catch a bus to town to work.
Okay, thank you, Margaret. Thank you very much. You've provided a lot of insight there, but we have run out of time. But thank you.
That's fine. You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Now, I don't think our next submitter has actually arrived, due at 10 or... So we have the opportunity to adjourn just briefly, take a little mini break for 5 minutes and come back at 10 sharp. for us to resume the meeting. Thank you, everybody. And I'm going to invite Akane Sadom, I hope I've said that correctly, to the table to speak to us.
Shall I go?
You can either sit if it's more comfortable, stand if you prefer. Yeah. Somebody can probably help you turn on the mic and things like that. Yeah.
Right.
So welcome, Akane, and yeah, I think you have 5 minutes as an individual, and that needs to include questions. So all yours.
Won't take too long. So, kia ora koutou katoa, ko Akane Sandom toku ingoa, ko taku pepe tēnei. My name's Akane Sandom, and this is my 10-month-old son. This is his first time seeing the council. quite young, quite early. Exactly. We live in Naio, and I've lived in Naio for quite a while, and he's lived there his whole life. And I just wanted to quickly talk about my submission on the Naio Connections, the cycleway project. I'm aware on the 1st of December, I think it was, you had the meeting with all the submitters. So thanks for giving me an opportunity to talk about that now. We really appreciate the time. And I first just wanted to say I'm really in strong support of the project. I think it's so exciting to see this project, and I can't wait to see it come to life and then benefit us specifically and our wider community, who I know will really make the most of it. And I just wanted to come in addition to really strongly supporting it, which I've done in my written submission, talk to just one change that I'd really hopefully like to see for the benefit of our safety. And that is one change that we're seeking with the design, which is safety for the downhill cyclists going down Naio Gorge. And just, so my understanding of the proposed design is that Naio Gorge will eventually have an uphill separated cycleway, which is fantastic. It can't ask for more than that. That will make biking up Naio Gorge safe for us, and I'll put them in the back and we'll go up the hill. But my understanding is for downhill, that won't be the case, and the improvements suggested are paint markings to suggest that cars and cyclists will share the road together. And that's what I've asked for your consideration to make safer. I won't be able to go down the gorge downhill with my baby on the back. That's because I don't feel safe going down the gorge at 50 k's an hour with a baby on the back. I don't really feel personally safe doing that myself, but it's a game changer having him on the back. I can't go less than 50 k's on a bike down that hill because cars are going 50 k's and they push, they overtake, they sort of squeeze cyclists to the side from my past experience, and there's no room for error. It's just too high speed, steep hill, winding corners, and I think that this proposed design, the rest of it's great. It's really good, and I'm so excited, but putting paint markings to suggest that cyclists still go on the road down the gorge just isn't quite going to cut it for us, and I won't be able to use that route. So as excited as I am, and I can't wait to get the toddler seat going and use all the rest of the cycleway, we won't be able to get into town. We'll be able to get home really safe, so we can go do our stuff in town if we can maybe catch a train in, but I'm not going to be able to get into town safely. So I really ask that you continue to push this project through. I think it's fantastic. I think I've said that over and over again, and is that maybe what you're saying too? But I just ask that while you progress this, you also look further into how you can make the downhill route along Naio Gorge safer for people like us. So we can use it because we're rearing to go. We've got the motivation, we want to go.
Yeah, thank you, Akane. You've made that point very clear. Now, are there any questions? Yes, we have one from Councillor McNulty
Kia ora.
and Councillor Pannett.
Might need to move amendment that we have more cute children at the table consistently. No, thank you for your submission. Would speed limit changes throughout the gorge that were consistent, let's say 30k limit right from the top of Naio through down into Kaiwharawhara, be an enabler for you to take that route?
It would definitely be a game changer. If it was the same road layout but 30 k's an hour, I'd feel much more confident going on that road with him on the back. It just 50Ks feels far too fast. I can't go 50Ks on the flat with him. 30Ks an hour down that hill, I think I could make it work. I'd definitely give it a go and try and stick to it.
Thank you. And Councillor Pennant.
Sorry, just a slight extension on that question. If 30K is through most of the city, will you feel comfortable cycling from Nio right around the city?
Without any road changes, or?
Yeah, we're just doing most of it is without infrastructure changes.
I think for a lot of it, yeah, with the roads that are currently 50Ks, if they're lowered to 30Ks, it changes the game massively, because cars are just going so noticeably as a cyclist slower. Comfort levels increase, and it feels safer. And I've heard that it is. The evidence suggests it is safer if you come off, if you have a crash.
We have one more, and I will be lenient, but it will need to be quick.
It is quick. Thank you for coming in and bringing baby as well. I'm interested to hear what possible solution you were thinking of.
Yeah. Ideally, some sort of cycleway, a separated cycleway. I know the road limitations, the width limitations, but ideally some sort of shared bi-directional. Can we look into, if at all it's possible to make some sort of segregated cycleway for downhill traffic? In the absence of that, I'd really like, the traffic designers, the people who know the stuff, to really get creative and look at it from a how can we make it work, rather than a why doesn't it work, which is what I look at. The multi-criteria analysis looks like it's saying it doesn't work, but can we approach it from a perspective of how can it work? But I don't know the answer, but ideally a separated cycleway, shared, bi-directional.
Well, thank you for that. You've been very clear, and that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Now, I think we have got Chris online. So, Chris, if you're ready to go, I know we were a bit early, but if you're ready to go, we'd be very happy to hear from you. Is Chris there? Yeah. So,
am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you now. We have, but we can't. Yes, we can see you as well. So, Chris, you have 5 minutes. It does go by quite quickly. That does need to include questions, and there normally are 1 or 2. So, if you want to leave a minute or so, that would be great.
Okay, no, that sounds good to me. Listen, I'm basically putting in a submission in opposition to the proposals that are being put forward for the Island Bay Township itself, because I believe it is effectively an extension of a failed bicycle or cycleway network in that part of the world. I have some issues with some of the terminologies being used by the City Council as well when they talk about safety improvements. I'm starting to believe that those words are a little duplicitous, because at the end of the day, what we're seeing in Island Bay is nothing like any improvements in safety for either cyclists or motorists or pedestrians. And quite frankly, the entire design of these cycleways are a spectacular failure. Okay, and the council needs to embrace that fact, and we really need to start looking at how various options can be put in place to replace what is there at the moment. Okay, now we have, in my opinion anyway, the designs that were implemented seem to have been ill-conceived, atrociously designed, and they were actually badly constructed as well, because we now have situations in Island Bay and various places where the cycleway is actually falling apart and creating an issue for people crossing the road, etc., etc. And I dare say for cyclists as well, because there appear to be great lumps of concrete scattered about the landscape in various areas. So I think really the council needs to look at this whole thing, the whole concept, and perhaps they can extend their minds to incorporate the entire cycle network plan to actually reassess the designs and the ideas that are being implemented as part of that plan. All right, because I know from overseas experience, when you travel to places like Holland, they have done it well. And I cannot understand why the city council here or the consultants they employ would like to think that they can reinvent the wheel. Okay, we really just need, if we're going to do something like this, no one's opposed to cycleways per se, but we are most certainly opposed to the fact that these cycleways, as they are now being imposed on the landscape, are an unmitigated disaster. You need to accept and embrace that fact, and you need to revisit the entire idea, okay, or the entire scheme, redesign it, and come back to the community with some new proposals. Ideally, you will actually consult the community before you even do that, because there has been very little consultation taking place. I have spoken to a number of people, businesses in both Island Bay, Newtown, Brooklyn, and so forth and so on. None of them have been consulted. And when I talk about consultation, I talk about the council setting up public meetings in which council officers actually show up and are prepared to confront the locals when they actually are able to present their points of view. And I think in a lot of situations argue their case, okay, because no one's happy. Island Bay community, there was a huge uproar when it was first proposed. I think something like 80% of the community were opposed to it. They were out on the streets protesting. All of that was ignored. And all of the submissions to date from those of us who are concerned about what's going on in our city, because you're decimating the city right now, need to be heard. And you need to set up a framework in which that can take place. So what I would suggest is, number one, in Island Bay, I mean, we also have some certain inconsistencies here. The plan I looked at was from Tonkin Taylor. I'm not sure why you're employing these people when you have staff and council who can do the very same work. But you're talking about removing 2 established Bahuta kawa trees so that a cycleway can meander through the township. You know, where's the greenery in that? Where's the green philosophy involved in that? I just can't understand it. Now, I've also had I also noticed during the briefing that was presented on the internet that Councillor Nurofen actually sort of suggested that you tell the local businesses what you're going to do. What I suggest, Councillor, is you ask them what they would like, okay? You're starting at it from the wrong end. So at the end of the day, when I talk about consultation, I mean get in there and start talking to people properly.
Okay, we do have I will allow a very quick question. Okay, point of order. I'm not sure we can do that with public submissions.
That's misrepresentation from the previous candidate for the Southern Ward. And as we know, the community support in that space, but I'm not aware of what he was talking about. I didn't talk to the community what he's representing now. That's misrepresentation. He has to back off.
I can't actually hear what he's saying.
At any rate, you have had your time, Mr. Dudfield, actually. We have had the 5 minutes. I was going to allow one question, but we probably have run out of time. So thank you for your submission. You have made your points.
Well, thank you. And I certainly hope you will listen to the submissions that are being made. I think actually a lot of them are suggesting that you really just need to revisit the whole thing.
Mr. Dudfield, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. We're not actually entirely sure whether the next 2 submitters have confirmed or not. So, no. And we have just sent them an email, but they haven't responded to that. So I think we actually might move on. Yeah. We'll take just a short break. Right, we're going to actually just move on to general business. So we're dealing now with the proposed road closures, and I've actually asked Councillor Nuruddin, Councillor Abdurrahman to introduce this. We're getting staff to introduce it, and then you actually move it. We've finished public participation because the two last participants didn't actually confirm and haven't turned up, despite a couple of email reminders. So, yeah. So can I invite the staff to the table to introduce the road, Maria and your colleague, to introduce the road closures.
To the table today is the Island Bay Festival on the Sunday the 12th of February and Round the Bays on Sunday the 19th of February. Road closures for their events. Any questions?
Are there any questions? I don't think so. Councillor Abdurrahman, do you want to move the recommendations?
Yes, please. Can I just move, ask you to all support the proposed temporary road closure for Round the Bay on the 19th of February and Island Bay Festival on the 12th of February 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Pauiwi Liz, you're happy to second it. Is there any debate? I don't think so. So we will, these have been regular events. They're part of our strategy to be an events capital, and we've not received any objections to either of them. So I think that we can just go straight to a vote. So press 1 if you agree with this, and 2 if you don't. Komana, that's carried. We'll now move to item 2.2, which is the new ground lease for Victoria Bowling Club. And can I invite the appropriate staff to the table to introduce the paper to us?
Morena koutou. So I'm Sanjay Patel from the Sporting Clubs Partnership Team. We manage the leases across the recreation, reserve and town belt land, and we also hold the relationships with all the sporting codes, Nukuora, formerly Sport Wellington. So I have Annalise Boss, who is one of our recreation lease advisors, who will introduce the paper.
Thanks, Sanjay. Kia ora koutou, councillors. So this paper is reporting back on the outcome of public consultation about the new ground lease for Victoria Bowling Club. Prior to the election, committee approved officers to commence this public consultation process, which is the next step in the leasing process per the Town Belt Act. This is a ground lease, so it means that the bowling club owns all the buildings and the bowling greens on the site. And officers' recommendation prior to the election was for a 10-year lease with one right of renewal for a further 10 years. And this was made on the basis of officers have been working with the club for the last kind of 18 months or so to help resolve some areas of non-compliance with the club to make sure that they're in a great position to kind of have a sustainable future. And these are outlined in the paper, being the removal of a TAB machine, the agreed phase-out of a residential tenancy, and that the club would attend to seismic strengthening of their building by 2028. So we did public consultation between August and September. This involves a notice published in the Don Post, notice on our website, writing to Mana Whenua, writing to the Residents Association and the Friends of the Town Belt, and we did not receive any public submissions. So on that basis, we are requesting that the Regulatory Process Committee refers this to full council tomorrow for final sign-off, which is required under the legislation. And I'm happy to speak to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Yes, Liz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Is there anywhere in the new lease that if they were to start engaging in the activities that they were, is there any repercussions? Like, I'd note that they've taken the TAB machine out, but once they get the lease, they could easily put it back in.
Thank you for your question. So we've already been working with our legal team in advance to kind of prepare what a draft lease would look like, and I think that's certainly something that we would look to get some legal advice to include in that document.
And further to that, I'm only saying that because I do know of a couple of incidences where that has happened, and I guess they just pay a peppercorn rent.
It's the stuff.
Yes, they pay a rental based on our leases policy, which is subsidised from market rate. Off the top of my head, I think it is about $2,000 plus GST per annum, but I couldn't tell you exactly, but yeah, subsidised for sure.
Yeah, no, thank you, because fully support healthy action in whatever form.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Pauiwi Liz. Are there any other questions of our staff? Right, well, I'm going to move that we take the officer's recommendations and agree with them. I note that when the lease was last signed was 2011, which was prior to our new Town Belt Act. So I guess some of this is about tidying up to fit with those requirements around trading and that sort of thing. Do I have a seconder for the, okay, Councillor McNulty, happy to take you as a seconder. Shall we just put this to the vote? Is there any other debate? No? And this does just go to council, so it will be on the agenda for tomorrow, as long as we approve it. And that's carried unanimously. Wonderful. All right, we're going to take morning tea now. I should have said, now we do have a very tight time frame to get through the rest of the papers, so I'm going to suggest 10 minutes and being back at 25 to. I'm welcoming Vida to the table to introduce the parade, or somebody anyway, to introduce the parade Island Bay Town Centre improvements paper. That is you, isn't it, Vida? Yes, right.
Great. Kia ora koutou, thank you. So this paper, we're coming back with 2 traffic resolutions. This is some of the final ones in a long process that started through the LTP, where councillors in the last training gave a clear indication that they wanted us to come in, make safety improvements through the parade and to do a town centre upgrade. So it's great to be at this point. The safety improvements through the residential sections, they have been approved and now implemented, and now we're coming to the town centre. In March, we were sent away to complete a parking management plan before this TR was completed, and also asked to work with the community on the town centre upgrade. We've now done that work. The parking management plan to mitigate the impact of these changes has been completed, and we have had a number of workshops, I think 3 workshops with local community, with both residential, business and organisation representation, which have been part of forming the design for the town centre upgrades. I will just note under point 2, there has been a change to the substantive, where we're amending the 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. time restrictions for the 120 parking restrictions to be changed to 8 till 6 p.m. and this is to create continuity throughout the whole area in Island Bay. In terms of the town centre upgrade, I've actually got a few slides which I would like to show you around the public space project, but the major changes in terms of the traffic resolution is that the 19 angle parks in the town centre are changed to 9 parallel, and then on the side streets to mitigate these changes we have changed 10 time unrestricted car parks to time restricted car parks. So in terms of the town centre upgrade, you can see the physical area there. We have an area in the main town centre which we've been looking at. We've also got some designs around connecting through to the schools behind the town centre, and then also a sub area where the Empire Cinema is. These designs have been developed in collaboration with the local community. I think we had 3 businesses on that working group, residents association and organisations, and they have helped inform our design team to make these changes. The process started with a open drop-in centre in Island Bay, where we got a whole lot of ideas onto some maps. These got worked through with the working group, and then these final designs were displayed about 2 weeks ago in the village, and we'll be displaying them again for community members on the 17th of December. Here's a couple of images. We just wanted to highlight how we're thinking. This is the connection through to the school and by the libraries, sort of think about how we can create more attractive and safe pathways through there, as both with art and lighting. This is by the public toilets in the town centre, and again looking at how we are integrating both new planting and the cycleway into the wider area. And then in the town centre, where the change from angle to parallel parking enables us to create more space for also businesses to spill out and use some of this area while still keeping a good path clear for pedestrians, and also to separate the bikes which are then closer to the road from that main pedestrian pathway which is under the verandas. So that was just a really quick process through. So I will close there and look forward to hearing your debate. And if there's any questions, please do ask.
Yes, so do we have questions? Yes, we do. So Councillor McNulty, and then I saw another hand down there.
Yeah, just some quick questions based on the public feedback this morning. Could you explain the need for the tree removal in the project and just tell us which businesses were on the working group?
Yeah, so in terms of the tree removal, We spent a lot of time trying to accommodate them into the project. There's one tree the main tree which needs to get removed. There's one smaller one which we're removing, and then the bigger one that was simply because otherwise we'd end up compromising the footpath space basically for the cycleway, and so we wanted to make sure that we had good footpath access, and then that required that the cycleway went there. We will be planting some new trees to replace them.
So the other question was just the businesses on the working group.
And the businesses on the working group. So we had 3 businesses on the working group. We contacted all the businesses in the area to ask who would be interested in joining that working group. We didn't get responses from all of them, but these 3 came in and were tasked as well with making sure that their colleagues were kept up to date, and we, through our mailing list, also kept all of those businesses up to date.
Councillor Abdurrahman.
Could you please?
Sorry.
Sorry, just are you able to tell us who the 3 businesses were? Or? Sorry, thank you.
Kia ora, Brennan. We had White Room Gallery for Andy Gregorio, and we also had the Island-based cinema for the first working group. That would be Pat Venezia. And we had, excuse me, I can't remember the third one at this moment. I apologize.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, Councillor.
Well, I think that's good to know that businesses are got an opportunity to put in. So how did you communicate those businesses when you reach out to them? Did you send a letter, or what is the communication?
So that was one of the things that was raised in the March 10th committee meeting, was that councillors really want us to go out and do active engagement. So we did send a letter, but we also went out onto site a number of times and had conversations both by door knocking on businesses, but also just in the public space, because we let people know that we were coming out before we did. So there were a number of opportunities to engage, and we did really work to make sure that happened. And that was Brad Singh, Patrick, who's not able to be here today, that's the project manager for the project, and then Brennan as well.
You happy with that? Okay. Councillor Abdurrahman, your turn. Yeah? Yeah, sorry. Right, Councillor Young. Okay, Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. You said the Empire Cinema only attended the first workshop. Is there any reason why they didn't attend any others? And how many others were there, workshops with them, with businesses?
So there were 2 more workshops after that, so 3 workshops in total. Can you remember Pat's?
They were under the impression that they weren't going to be included in the scope of works, and they also excused themselves from the working group.
Right. Did they give a reason why they excused themselves from the working group?
I think it was back to that scope question, that they wanted to see, be able to influence the scope of the works, but we were confined to the footpath space for the town centre upgrade project.
And can you tell me, has there been any sort of independent assessment of the economic impact of the changes for this area, given it is, a big part of it is a commercial area?
Well, so there hasn't been specifically now, but we do pre and post economic analysis.
But you haven't done any up until now?
No.
And
but it's not our belief that there will be a large economic impact based on other. We're actually hoping that this even helps businesses in terms of being able to have that area where they can have serving outside.
I know, but so when you say there's going to be a future assessment done, how's that going to be constructed?
So we collect economic data pre and post. That is, of course, at a higher level. We can't go down into the individual businesses, but in an area-based approach, we look at the impacts.
I think, through you, Madam Chair, more specifically, it's the paymark data we're talking about. So we measure the spend via FPOS transactions before because we can access the data, we pay for the data set actually, and then afterwards, when the implementation of transitional and transformational projects go in place, we measure the paymark data, the FBOS data after.
Okay, all right, thank you. I have a question, and it seemed to me from the traffic assessment that it was going to be really important that the mitigations we planned are successful. So how are we going to monitor and enforce the restrictions that we're possibly approving today?
So you're talking about the parking
Yeah, the
mitigations?
parking mitigations and the time restrictions and the things that we're maybe putting in place through this committee process. How will they be enforced?
So in terms of enforcement, that's through the parking operations team. They currently go out there and enforce that. They're also currently in RFP looking for new digital solutions to be able to support their work in the future. So that is not known yet, but that will influence how we work in the future.
The other thing, because I know when we put the 24-hour scheme in, we definitely had put that in with the view of how it was actually going to be managed and enforced. Yeah, so how much thinking has been done with the parking services around that?
So we work really closely with parking services on all of our projects and across the 3 business units, city design, transport infrastructure and parking services. And so post the parking policy, there's a number of different work streams which need to be implemented. One is the parking management plans, which we've done here. The other is looking at the residence scheme, and another is looking at this support package that is currently out. So we're working constantly with them. We've got a working group that talks about all of our projects, and they're happy with the approach we're doing here.
And just one more from me. The changes that were made to allow more footpath space, which look to me really good, how did that come about? Was that through working with businesses, or was that just sort of some more thinking in-house about what could be nice to have?
I think it was a collaborative approach.
And which businesses, or how did that work?
It was through the working group. So that was
through the working group. Okay.
One of the things the residents were also very keen on was spaces where they could congregate in that town centre so that they could get more of a feeling of community. So that's been one of the key drivers through that design process.
Okay, that's great. And just a point that I suppose we could make is the consultation with the Island Bay community has been going on now since probably 2014. So we must have lots of pieces of data about what this community thinks. Would that be the case?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Are there other questions? Councillor Foon.
Kia ora, Chair. Just a couple, and I'm sorry I haven't got the page numbers on them, but I think the main one is how will we measure progress and report on this to the community once the project has been rolled out? So what will our measures be for success?
Yep, so this is aligned with our Panaki the bike network plan. So there's some clear benefits which are described in that, and that is connected network, safety, making sure that the designs are so best practice as much as we can, and then also making sure that it's working for that local community. So there's we've got what are they called, those things in the road?
Traffic separation.
No, the counters. We've got counters in, and we can look at that, and we will also be keeping an eye on those across the program.
Awesome. Particularly for the town centre upgrades, I think there'll be different views on what success looks like there. But I mean, what will our measures be for success of that project?
So they were initially defined actually through the Love the Bay process, and we've continued to work with those. I can't remember the specific ones. Brennan, can you?
We would be increasing public amenity and also working towards footfall measurements for the businesses, and then the use of the public space.
Yeah, look, through you, Madam Chair, I think the best way to summarise the way we track benefits we call it benefit realisation, is the TBL. So triple bottom line, we go social, economic and environmental. Environmental are ped counts and cycleway counts, i.e. has there been an uptake and is there more footfall on the street in front of shops? The economic being, of course, the paymark data I referred to earlier. And the social stuff relates to the engagement we do through the Business Improvement District. So we have an active group and network around the city. We link in with them. They give us feedback about how the performance of the centre's going, how the streets talking to the residents talking to the street and the various businesses. So that's how at a high level we look at trying to measure our performance in that regard. The counters on the streets, you council are familiar, we're rolling out more counters for our cycleways. So as we put these infrastructure in the ground, that is the most telling and real-time data we can get in terms of uptake. Seasonal variations, of course, with winter and summer, but and economic variations. But generally speaking, that's how we're monitoring the success of these projects. The three: environmental, social, and economic counters.
And so, excuse me, Chair. Thank you. Through you again. Do we have a time frame to look, say, like a year after implementation?
Yeah, the working parties internally for the management look at the data quarterly, but the report back concept with the new triennium is an annual kind of update with the bike network plan in terms of performance standards and benefit realisation.
Kia ora, thank you.
Thank you. I think that might be it. Are there any other further questions or are we done? Councillor Pannett?
Can I just ask one question, which will cover 3 papers, because it's the same thing. I was just talking to Vida before about being relentless about providing alternatives when people bring up legitimate reasons why they can't do without a car. And it's a question for you too, Liam. Obviously we've got the travel demand management going through, Let's Get Welly Moving, but is there some other work we can do internally with, say, Sport Wellington to kind of go, okay, can we think of a more creative solution than everyone getting into a car at the weekend? Working with the supermarkets, that's another, a big generator of trips. Again, we're doing the work on travel demand with our schools, but can we do more? So I'm just wondering if you think we're doing enough and whether this needs to be more resource to really, really up that, because what I get from some of my constituents, they won't do what I'm doing even though they also live close to the central city. Kia ora.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, and thanks, Councillor. That's a behaviour change question, and so when we look holistically about what we're trying to do to the city is effectively a rewiring. We have Alison Howard working with the Communications Department trying to educate the community on what change looks like. We're doing it physically on the ground. It's very disruptive. We hear those submissions every day. It's hard work, and it's very challenging for both councillors and officers and the community. At a high level, a meta level, we've got the narrative we're building under Te Atakura, which is all about behaviour change and thinking and living and moving about your city differently. So that behaviour change program goes live in the new year. We're starting to really ramp it up. You'll probably see circulating already quite a short 3-minute clip that explains what the future looks like. I think it's landing already very successfully. I think the mayor features in that one, and that's the type and style we're going to try to educate the community about what change looks like moving forward to a zero carbon future.
Yeah, and can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
And in our work program in the new year, we're starting a logistics strategy, and logistics is a broad meaning of the word, but how do we keep our city humming as we go through these changes, and also as we're in a construction phases throughout the city as well. So that will be a program of work starting in the new year.
So that's helpful, but I'm not just, sorry,
Okay. I think you probably have asked your question, Councillor. We do need to start the debate.
Deputy Mayor, I didn't get an answer to my question. Okay, I'll ask
you did get an answer. I think you need to get further answers offline.
I'm happy to talk to Councillor Pannett later as well.
I think so, because we do need to keep moving and we've got to start the debate on this. So I'm going to introduce to move the paper. All I would really like to say is Island Bay has been an issue that I've been really actively engaged with since 2014. It hasn't been the easiest of processes, as we all know, but I've noticed that the heat has gone out of this discussion. I mean, we did get some public participation today, but it wasn't a huge amount. I'm very respectful of those people who came from both sides of the argument just to tell us things. It's important that we listen. But what I've also noticed about Island Bay, and it's been confirmed again with this election, that our two ward councillors there have both been very pro this cycleway. And in fact, it's been affirmed time and time again that whatever stats people might like to use, the stats about who gets elected have definitely been in favour of those people who've been progressive on this issue. And I think that, also, Island Bay is still a very desirable place to live, that whatever people might say, the detractors of the cycleway, it hasn't made it a suburb that people don't want to go to and buy a house in. In fact, I think that the signs are there that the more we do of this kind of thing, the more attractive and appealing the place becomes. What we're debating and moving today actually is the fine-tuning of the very last bits. But this is the icing on the cake, and I think this has the ability to, make the whole cycleway more workable, safer and more workable, tailoring the parking to what specifics businesses and stakeholders in various parts of the parade have said that they would like, but also really making that shopping centre that's such an important part of Island Bay so much nicer. It's going to beautify it, it's going to make it more friendly for people. And, actually it's going to still work. My only concern would be that the parking survey does show that it's important that the mitigations we've planned are enforced and work as intended, because there is parking pressure in Island Bay, and until people change and use different kinds of modes, that pressure is going to still exist. So I think one of my biggest pleas would be that we are moving these parking restrictions for a reason, because they've been carefully thought out to mitigate some of the parking removal, and therefore it's really important that we have the backup to make sure the community understands the new ways in which these spaces are going to be utilised, and what they provide, what their purpose is intended for, and how they're meant to be used. So look, I have no hesitation in recommending that we support these, all of these. I shall be wholeheartedly pressing my green button. And now I think I'll ask Councillor Abdurrahman.
Yep, I would second that paper. I think, as you said, Madam Chairman, Chair, Island Bay community has gone through a lot in this space, but now we promised one thing during our campaign: no surprise anymore. Previously, what the community says, they didn't say no to cycle lane, but they didn't want to see a surprise. They want to be engaged, they want to be consulted, they want to have a say, even if what we're doing is sometimes not going to be in favor. This time, it's good to see officers are engaging in such a way with businesses. I'm so happy to hear they communicated with all businesses, and they engage them through sending letters and door knocking, and some of the businesses are engaged, which is really good. In the future, I want to see more businesses, when they get an opportunity to have a say, to put more of their, to frame it. So this paper is really good for the community. It's one of the best suburb in the city, and it's going to make it even better. So let's do this and make it straight for community, where our kids can enjoy, where they can feel safe, and also businesses can be supported. I looked at the submission, and one of the businesses, there are people who biking to their businesses, but they still want to see some people who would be driving as well. This is an answer to that. There are people who can be driving, but they can't be parking for the whole day. If you go to shopping, how long do you stay? It's not really much. So I think this is an answer for the community. I highly support it.
Thank you. And we do have Councillor Young and then Deputy Mayor Foon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, of course, I don't have a vote here, but I do have a voice, a bit like the poor businesses in Island Bay, because as one of them said to me, we meet the council, we talk to the officers, they go away and ignore us. They don't care about what is important to local business. I mean, this cycleway has been a nightmare since 2014, when I did a notice of motion to try and stop it. And it was, I won't give you the history of that, but we spent millions. We'll never know how much this cycleway has cost. It's been 8 years, which has divided the community. It has been a total disaster. And the requests for changes by the businesses have been ignored. And I'm told there's no space for vehicles when the bus stops at the bus stop. vehicles can't go past. I don't know, I haven't been there for a while. And sometimes I can't read my own writing. I mean, I'm interested that the pavements are bigger so that people can enjoy outside space. I went to school in Island Bay from Standard 1 until I finished as head girl at the now closed Erskine. Yeah, and I can tell you, it's as cold as the Arctic there in the winter. It's in the eye of the southerly. You'd have to be a very brave person to spend any time outside in Island Bay, other than a few blessed days like today. I just think this is incredibly sad. We have got this so wrong, and we have antagonised so many people in that community. It's really, really sad. And it's a shame that we're now regarded as a tourist destination, because I have friends who come to Wellington, and the one thing they want to do is go and see the Island Bay Cycleway. Anyway, I don't have a vote, but I've had my voice.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Deputy Mayor Foon.
Kia ora. Thank you for your remarks, Councillor Young. I do spend a little bit of time in Island Bay, and my experience is quite the opposite. But anyway, I do cycle there all through the year. But look, I'll go back to my agenda and we'll get this right. But I just wanted to say, when I was reading the papers yesterday, I actually found myself smiling as I was reading the description of the town centre. And I think that it just created the space for people, and really that's what all of this is about. So a cycleway by itself is one thing, but actually creating these spaces in conjunction with better public transport and other ways of getting around is how we'll bring vibrancy to the city. I just want to acknowledge the officers for the work that you've done on that, and I can say that Councillor Abduram and myself have worked alongside the community while we've been in these sessions, and generally they were a really positive experience with the community contributing to the outcomes that we've got here today. Also, just looking at this design, I'm really excited to see this happen in Wellington. As from what I can see visually, with the cycleway going on the inside of the car parking, this is what has happened in Karangahape Road in Auckland, and my understanding is that this is quite a successful project in terms of community building and business building in this area. And actually, I think the opportunity for creating Island Bay as a destination village in Wellington, a tourism village, that's what makes me very excited about this. This is a place you will take people, cycle to the beach, even when it's Arctic. And also there's a huge community building around the arts trail, and all of these pieces just go into helping create an amazing place that Island Bay can be and should be. So yes, I will say I do have my voice and my experience, and I just also want to thank all the people for contributing in these submissions. It's really important that we understand and that there was a positive response. So kia ora, Chair, thank you.
And Pauiwi Liz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to also thank the officers for the mahi that they've done and getting to this stage. Before I was on this council, I recall Island Bay being in the Evening Post, Don Post a number of times, and it was pretty negative. So I think that where you've landed is a really good space, and I want to congratulate you for the mahi that you've done, and particularly in trying to be inclusive. I like the questions that were asked previously to our debate, and that you did you have tried to be inclusive of all of the communities within that community. And I get it that we can't please everyone, but one of the big concerns that I had was for the businesses and how it would impact on them. And I think the question that was asked to one of the submitters this morning, I think her name was Margaret Crisp, the answer that she gave I thought was really quite telling, because it was really good. It wasn't just from a business point of view, but a customer's point of view. And I think that putting in the time restrictions on the parking is one of the things that's contributing to helping the traffic move and stopping people parking there all day. And so hearing it from a customer's point of view, I thought that was really quite good to hear, because quite sometimes we think that let's ask the business people because, you know, they'll know. But I think you've done a really good job of covering both aspects. So I'm really happy to support this. And I do pick up your point that you've made, Madam Chair, that the two candidates that were elected and were elected as the voice of the people. And what I've heard them say is in support of this. So I think that I'm really comfortable with what's on the table in supporting this.
Thank you, Liz. Now we've got quite a list, so I can just ask everyone to be to the point, which you have been. So Councillor Calvert, Councillor Randall, and I see Councillor Abdurrahman, you can have another go because it is your ward. Right. But I do want to wrap it up too and get to the vote because we have other important papers.
Yes, but we need to have a say. So yes, look, thank you. And thank you to the officers. I know it's a difficult, very difficult task in bringing together different parts of the community. And I think there's lots of good things for the town centre in what you have and what you're proposing. However, I think one of the things I'm hearing from the business community, and I've had a few emails in the last couple of days, is there hasn't been the engagement that they really wanted to see. And the engagement has been, seems to have been on our council's terms of how we do the stuff rather than what relates to them the best, which is why I think you may have seen some drop off after the first workshop. And I think we need to think about, well, why would a key business walk away and not want to sit and engage? And then the other thing is I've seen, I know you presented, I saw an email on the 24th of November where you've gone out to a lot of the business representatives and said, here's what we're thinking of. And I really just don't think from the 24th of November to when these papers were published a week ago that there's been that opportunity that we've been offering.
Can I just remind
through them?
Yeah, address through the chair if you don't mind, Councillor Calvert.
Oh, sorry. Yes, apologies for that. I really, I am concerned that the business community and who are very conscious about their customers, because if they don't get customers, they don't get their income and they don't carry on in business. Really concerned to hear that economic assessment is non-existent, and really what is being planned is really just a data capture thing. There's, as we all know, that there's data information then going on to knowledge. And it's very reactive, not proactive. And I see this as very transit-orientated and not people-orientated design for this area, as in probably a lot of our suburban areas. So look, I'm not going probably to support most of these recommendations, and primarily because I think there are some good elements, but there are also elements that are not that I can't support. So it's probably just easier just not to support them all in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert. Councillor Randall.
Thank you. Although I'm a new councillor, I've been, like a lot of people in Wellington, been following the Island Bay project for the decades that it's taken. It has been, it's been said before, a very difficult project, but I do think that what's been proposed is trying to make things as good as it can be. There has been some lessons learned I want to highlight. In particular, talk to the local people first before you do stuff, and I think that the project has tried to very much embrace that, even though it's in a putting right sort of way. However, I'm still very concerned that the prioritisation of what we're trying to achieve in our city is wrong. I think that there's coming coming from up north, in terms of the cycleway proposals that we are facing in Johnsonville, it struck me how many people rely on getting access to their services because they are disabled, they're elderly, they've got kids. Cars are the only mode when we have a bus service that's so unreliable, and proceeding ahead and removing more car parks when people cannot take the bus literally, because it literally may not turn up, is a real concern to me. I also think that the bus service is does the heavy lift out of Island Bay, not the cycleway, and I don't think that's still been properly prioritised. I'm also note that I'm still not sure that it is safer than what was there before. I've got some stats in front of me, and there are a number of accidents, cycling accidents and pedestrian accidents along that place. It's not really that safe a place, and I'm not sure that it is less safe than what was there before all this started. And I just want to highlight that because that is an objective. Lastly, I also want to note that putting it right is what's counting, and I really commend the officers for trying to make it work, and I think we're much closer to what is a good solution. Unfortunately, I would also note that as soon as this project is finished, we're likely to be digging up the road again for light rail. So thanks very much.
Councillor Randall, and I think we have Councillor Abdurrahman again. Is that right? Yes. Yeah. Oh, okay. It's me. So if you want to have a quick say, we are in committee, so you are allowed to speak twice, but wouldn't normally encourage it. But yeah, but you can.
Look, I'm from this community, and this community has gone through a lot because of the way this council make decisions previously, especially surprising communities. Now, what I would like to ask each and every one of you is, community is moving on. Please let's not play politics to divide the community. The community is united. The community is going forward. We campaigned on a lot of issues. Now they have decided, they have spoken. Now it's time to move on. This is a time to do the job. It's not a time to keep dividing the community. There are some businesses are going through tough time. Look, I do run small business with my wife. I know. Let us not use those businesses to play our politics. It's not an easy time. Yes, they might gonna get a bit of a difficulty when this is during transition period. I wish we can do something in that space, but not playing politics to divide the community. The other point is, yes, bus is not there. We need to campaign and advocate for the community to connect, example, Kilbirnie and Island Bay, but there is no buses. We need to work together on how we can advocate to the regional council and getting that. But again, let's not politicize. The other point is there are people, councillors, who work very hard for us to be here today, and some of them are not here. It's just Councillor Flair, who did really work with Laurie Phone, and I really need to recognize the hard work they put on this space and getting the funding for the village upgrade for Island Bay and Berhampur. Now that's what's happening. The community has been asking. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Well, if there are no further speakers, I'll quickly sum up what, a right of reply. Thank you, Councillor Abdurrahman. You made some of the points I was going to make and did them very well. I think that the main point I'd like to make is what we're trying to offer the city is choice. So it's not just about cars, it's not just about buses, and it's not just about cycling or scootering, but what we're trying to provide is a city where the infrastructure is actually fit for all these modes, and you have a legitimate choice of what you use. And what I'm actually seeing in the eastern suburbs, where we have got some quite good infrastructure now, is in the absence of the buses, I'm seeing more and more people actually taking up cycling as an option, and it's just nice that they've got that choice. And, you know, we talked about how scooters are a menace on the footpath, but until we get better cycling infrastructure, we're not going to address that mode choice either. So I think that there is room to do it all. It's always going to be a bit of a compromise. You know, that we will see some people losing some of the rights that they've traditionally enjoyed, and they won't necessarily like that. But when they put the bigger picture hat on, I think that the community will understand what we're trying to achieve. And I would also like to thank the staff for the care that's gone into the design, and I just hope we can do it for $1.5 million, because it does look beautiful. And I think that the community will all appreciate that. So I think at that there isn't really much more to say. Oh, just a point about the bus service improving. The inline bus stops, they are what the regional council prefers. Apparently, they do slow down cars, but they're what they prefer because it makes it easier for the drivers and easier for people getting on and off. Apparently, so I'll leave it with that. But I think we can vote.
Can I do a division, and can we take them separately, please?
Absolutely, we can do a division. Did you want to take something separately?
All of them.
All of them, okay. So in that case, we will vote first on number 1, that we received the information. And we'll have a division for everything, thanks. That's carried. We'll go to number 2, which is the traffic resolution.
2A and 2B separately, please.
Do you wish to vote separately on them?
Yes.
Okay. 2A. And that's carried. And now 2B. That is carried by majority. And number 3. And that's carried by majority. Thank you, councillors. Right, we'll move on to the, that's, okay. We'll move on to item 2.4, which is the proposed road stopping. I've actually asked you, Councillor Calvert. Oh, first of all, we'll have the officers. John, I think you are introducing it, or?
Kia ora koutou. My name's John Vreens. I'm the Property Advisory Manager. I've been in council for 20 years and I've been in Island Bay for 30. Just wanted to say that. My team deals with acquisitions and disposals on behalf of council, act on as a property advisor for council as a landowner. We do easements, road stoppings, covenants, special projects, provide advice on leases sometimes. Not our speciality, but there you go. Paul Davidson's the Senior Property Advisor. He's managing this road stopping process. So I'll get him to introduce the report. Thank you.
Good morning. The paper concerns application that Council has received from the owners of 76 Ringi Kapapa Road to purchase approximately 239 square metres legal road land adjoining. They currently use part of the land for their garage and fenced encroachment. Other than that, the land contains vegetation and slopes steeply down to Ringi Kapapa Road. The road stopping process is to be carried out under the Local Government Act, which requires public notification. So if the recommendations of this report are accepted and it's recommended to Council to approve that, the public notification will happen later in the process. If there are objections received to that, which become sustained, then they'll be referred back to this committee for decision. Happy to take any questions.
Just me again, just on the public notification process, we found out this morning that we neglected to include in this report, and Holden has communicated with me subsequently, that there is a site of significance to Māori nearby to this particular road stopping across the road. And we've shared an email which has a PDF of a screenshot of the district plan which shows the area compared to the proposed road stopping area. And I understand Holden is proposing an amendment which is I've seen and I endorse it.
Right, so thank you for that and for that extra information. Are there questions? My question would be is, are we going to include, if it's come with officer support, do we want to actually include it with the main paper? Or do you want to actually bring it as an amendment? I guess that's a question.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure what the difference is, so I'm relaxed. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, maybe
is that
I'll
all
do
right
that.
with you, Councillor? Would you? Yeah, okay. Okay. I think that's an elegant way of dealing with it. That would mean that you move the paper with the amendment included.
Okay.
And you can speak to that. And it's come with officer support, so I'm sure we'll all be very happy to support you in your.
Okay. Should I
No,
do
but
that now?
we're not ready for that process yet. I was just kind of trying to establish what we were trying to do. Are there other questions of John? Sorry.
Paul.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or should we just move on? Right, it doesn't look like there are. So I'm going to hand it over then to Pauiwi Holden to introduce the paper. To move the paper. We changed our process last term and I'm still getting vaguely used to it. You're moving it.
Thank you, Chair. Kia ora tātou. So, yeah, I'd like to move the paper with an amendment, and the amendment is basically just to recognise that. So we're disposing of land here, we're proposing to dispose of land, and it's really important that we recognise if we're ever going to do that, we should be talking to iwi first to see if they want it back, and then have that conversation with them. So my amendment is to agree to dispose of the land subject to the council first approaching Taranaki whānui ki te upoko te ika, and then Ngāti Toa to gauge their interest in the land proposed for disposal. So that kind of recognises that prior rights and interests piece that mana whenua have. Oh, sorry, can I just add?
Yeah, of course.
So the Māori heritage site that John referred to, which is just over there, it's about 20 metres northwest of the land that's proposed for disposal. It was part of Orangi Kaupapa, which was a large cultivation area for Taranaki whānui that extended quite a long way north and quite a bit to the east of that particular location. Took in the whole of the Botanic Gardens and that whole ridgeline north on the Tinakori Hill there and down the hillside. Apparently the sun aspect was really good in that area and it allowed cultivation on quite sloping terrain. So it is an important wāhi whakahirahira for Taranaki whānui. Yeah, koina noi ho.
Thank you for that. And I think Councillor Calvert's offered to second it. Would you like to speak?
No, I don't need to speak.
Is there any further debate? Councillor Paul.
Just briefly want to say, this is the value of having representatives of mana whenua at the table. We would not have known otherwise the significance of this site and being able to acknowledge the opportunity there to perhaps restore the original purposes of that whenua. Grow kai, we all know we need more community gardens, especially where there will be more housing built within the inner city. So just want to acknowledge you and the mātauranga that you bring to the table. Kia ora.
Yeah, I would also just quickly like to say that I'm appreciative of your eagle eye over this matter and the fact that you've identified a little bit of a gap in our process where, obviously we need to maybe tighten up how the information from the district plan gets incorporated into our information. But, even if it's just something as simple as just we organise to have some sort of plaque or information put on the land somehow to identify the cultural significance of this particular part of Wellington. I think this adds to the richness of our city and to our, to that whole feeling of the bicultural heritage. And I'm probably not expressing myself particularly well, but I'm very happy to support this with the amendment, and thank you again. And Puiwi, Liz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to tautoko what Holden's doing here. So it's not necessarily to say that we don't want it to go ahead, but in some way it needs to be acknowledged at the space. And this has happened a couple of times in the short time that I've been here. So just a little reminder to officers that just because you think that the space is not relevant or important to Māori, you actually need to check. So grateful that you spotted this and we are able to address it. But through you, Madam Chair, what you're proposing that might be what falls out of it, that there's a plaque or something that acknowledges the significance of the site. The purpose of the purchase of this is really these residents are actually using the space or encroaching on it, I think is the word. So this is a way of being able to actually do it all legally, tidy it all up, and that's correct? Yeah, ka pai.
That's probably more a question for officers, but I think they had some development ideas, possibly. Maybe we are in debate now, so we probably can't, but maybe offline we can just check with officers.
Well, we could do that when they're talking with mana whenua then, because that might be a different ballgame.
All right. Is there any further debate? Okay. In that case, let's put this one to the vote. Actually, Holden, it's for you to. No, it's for me to. This new. Oh, your right of reply. In that case, we will go to the vote. Wonderful. Carried unanimously. Brilliant. Okay, we will now move on to the NIO connection, the walking, biking and bus improvements. And who have we got to speak to this? We've got Claire and Jonathan.
Kia ora I ngā kai kaunihira, he pai ki te kōrero mo te whakapai ake I o tātou tiriti. It's great to be back to talk about our next two transitional bike network projects. These deliver on the long-term plan commitment to deliver a rapid rollout of the bike network. They also deliver on the Te Atakura Climate Action Plan, where transport was identified as our biggest opportunity for carbon emission reduction. The positive climate impact of this work has actually been recognised recently, and these two projects are among the group that will be funded through the Climate Emergency Response Funding. So if approved, the majority of the costs of these projects will be covered nationally. We'd like to start by thanking and acknowledging our mana whenua partners who we continue to work on this program alongside. We'd also like to thank and acknowledge the large numbers of people who turned out to participate in this process, not just through the formal consultation, but through the engagement prior as well. We recognise, like last time, that these designs are not perfect for anyone, but we believe they provide a significant safety and strategic improvement on the use of the street space compared to what we have out there today, and we're able to deliver them in months rather than years, which is what you tasked us to do. These new projects have introduced new challenges for us. They weren't as technically complex as our previous ones, particularly Newtown to the city, but they have had different impacts on different communities. We've incorporated a lot of what we learnt through the process of the first two projects into these, and we've seen those improvements making a real difference. So some of the things that we did differently this time, we had much earlier and more ongoing engagement with the businesses for both of these projects. We had multiple letter drops to all properties along the route. We had new engagement and survey improvements that made it easier for people to participate in the process. We had more wins for pedestrians, including some proposed raised crossings that will make it much easier and safer for people to walk locally, but also to access the bus stops. And I'm proud to say we are the first council in the country to make some or propose some minor speed change reductions using the new process, the alternative method, it's not a very sexy name, from the rule change that was made this year. So both of these, and it was really great to see the overwhelming support that came through the consultation for those speed change reduction proposals. So both of these projects, both Ngaio and Aro, are more residential in nature than our first two projects. And for Ngaio, the route goes through a more industrial area where some of the businesses' operations have relied on the use of the public street over time. So there are some really unique challenges with these two routes, which has led us to propose a staged approach, recognising that there are some short pain points where people are being asked to adapt to new ways of living, working and moving around. And we proposed this staged approach not for the first stage to prove the need for the second stage. They're actually a complete design together that we don't think will maximise uptake until all of it is delivered. We simply propose the staged approach here to give the businesses of Kaiwharawhara a bit more time to plan how they can do things differently with their staff and with their customers. If you know Kaiwharawhara, you'll know there's actually quite a bit of private off-street parking in this area, much of it that sits empty for times of the day where some businesses are closed or quiet. So we know there's a really vibrant and connected business community down there, and you would have seen that in the oral submissions, and we can see some really good opportunities for collaboration in that off-street parking space to maximise the use of land in that area. Unfortunately, as you know, there are no street changes where there are 100% win-wins for everybody, and there are impacts of that work and this work, and we recognise that. Jonathan and Bree have spent many, many hours out on these streets talking to residents, businesses, community groups, and have worked on many changes and tweaks to reflect what they've heard, but there will still be some negative impacts. Having said that, it's worth remembering that Ngaio Connections project received 2/3 support with 67% of submissions supporting or strongly supporting, even higher for the speed limit reduction. So we think there's a really strong mandate for change for this project. As you heard at oral submissions, Ngaio is close to town, and there are lots of people who bike this route and lots more who would if it felt less scary. The proposed option in front of you today reflects what we think is the right balance between design compromises based on feedback and design integrity that will support a safe and functional route delivered in a way that we think is fair for the community. If approved today, we look forward to installing most of the route in the second quarter of next year, so starting from late March, and once completed, getting feedback from the community and making tweaks as needed.
Thank you. That's a great introduction and full of information. Are there any questions? No. That's very good. Well, thank you very much. I forgot last time to mention that it's probably you're able to go back to your other seats if there are no questions, and we'll carry on having our debate. But thank you very much for all your hard work. Now, I have asked Councillor McNulty to introduce the paper, to move the amendments.
Tēnā koutou katoa. It gives me great pleasure to move the Ngaio Connection paper to Koata Hātepe, the Regulatory Processes Committee today. So this initiative at its heart is about allowing people to move safely and enable more modes of transport in our city. And throughout our public submissions a fortnight ago, what we had was pretty clear support for a cycleway down the Ngaio Gorge. That tweaks were the main thing that was required. We've had some particular support within Ngaio itself, and we've heard from submitters for whom this change will be transformational, as it will ensure safety when they commute to and from work, let them get back on their bike after having actually been injured and giving up due to injury, or giving them a confidence to pick up a bike for the first time. And with our e-bike trial ahead of us, this is a really great opportunity for us to build the infrastructure that will support that greater uptake of cycling and micro-mobility in Wellington. So the ability to commute to town in 15 minutes is a really compelling proposition, especially given the state of our bus network and trains currently, but as long as it's unsafe, we're not going to see that uptake. So what we're seeing today are improvements for all road users that will make it safer to walk, drive and cycle in the Ngaio Gorge and Kaiwhatawhata, and I particularly do want to commend the council officers for taking on board extensive feedback from both businesses and community, taking the lessons learned from previous projects and providing a genuine engagement. I've heard from cycling advocates who would prefer a two-lane cycleway that would remove nearly all the street parking through the route. Going uphill only is a genuine consensus move from council to balance the needs of everyone in that area. I've seen comments from cycle proponents calling what we're looking today a mitigated failure or doing things the slow old way, as in their view it doesn't go far enough. So it's pretty clear to me that this is not one group demolishing another when it comes to public consultation. Island Bay 2.0, this is not. Whilst cycleways, and it was acknowledged by the officers, are not a win-win scenario all the time, council have done a good job balancing the needs. They've made 13 changes off the back of public submissions just over the last fortnight, as late as yesterday. And there's some things like extending P30s into P60, so there's time to go to the gym or cafes, retaining angle parking so that less car parks are removed on Cameron Street, retaining a permanent loading zone, taking out a proposed pedestrian refuge which will allow 4 parks to remain outside the Sweat Gym, and implementing 3 P10 parks across from the Crofton Road Dairy. Wellington businesses, they're run by smart and resilient people. We've seen that as we've gone through COVID lockdowns. There are major opportunities for businesses within Kaiwhatawhata to collaborate, work together and share parking, especially around balancing the capacity in underutilised places like Spotlight, which I drove past at 8 a.m. in this morning and I counted had 3 cars in the entire car park at that point. I wanted to make a note that similar predictions of doom and gloom were made with the implementation of the Hutt Road Shared Pathway. When it went out to consultation in 2016, I went back and actually found some comments from those consultation. What was prosed was, quote, severe, or, quote, customers will look elsewhere. We've seen since that pathway opened in 2019 that the area actually continues to thrive as a business corridor with further commercial and industrial developments. Not going to sugarcoat that there's going to be some initial difficulty and pain for businesses in Kaiwhatawhata here. That's why it is a transitional approach that provides the time to adapt, and these businesses have the skills, the resilience and the know-how to do exactly that. So I ask you to support this paper today, to understand officers have worked extensively to make this proposal workable. They've made a considerable number of changes to address concerns and to pass papers without amendments that fail to deliver certainty or that they differ on our streets being made safer and more accessible. And finally, to remember that 67% of the 348 submissions received for this project were in support. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor McNulty. Very passionate introduction, moving. Who would like to second? All right, Councillor Paul, it's for you. You'll reserve your right. Is there any debate? I think there is an amendment coming, so... Okay, so would you like to speak now? Okay,
thank you. These amendments have been brought about by conversations with the community, in particular around with the business community in Kaiwharawhara, the residents from Cameron Street, and the community around the Ngaio Union Church, which is on the corner of Kenya and Crofton Road. I will, given the previous discussion on the Island Bay, where and talked about how the elected representatives were from what was described as progressive. I'd just like to point out that the two of the three councillors elected for this particular ward, I would describe them as liberal rather than progressive. So, and that might just give you some insight into what the people of this area actually want to see. I acknowledge the officers have done engagement with the local communities, but probably similar to Island Bay, a lot of the business people feel that they really haven't been listened to, and in so much that I've had feedback from them, just feeling, they've been through a tough couple of years from the pandemic, from COVID, from having to adapt for that. They're really tired. And having this engagement come to them just prior to Christmas through to the very busy period is not helpful in terms of timing. Very similar to Island Bay, where we heard from the Baptist Church. The Nye Union Church experiences the same thing, is now a place for meeting with the community, wellness, education, leisure, and we heard from them last week. And holds funerals, christenings, all of that, where people do need to be able to access that. I've heard quite a few comments about Nio Gorge, but it's really interesting because Nio Gorge has basically been down to one lane under construction since about 2017, since that massive landslip, and we've had even more slips this year, and it's not due to be completed until February next year now. And I think it'll be interesting, and with the work that's been done, which has been really good of the office at the same time, is to actually build in the cycle, a cycleway through that gorge part. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how that works through. But what the businesses are saying, and it was the same with the NIO, we haven't done an economic assessment. We're putting in a cycleway through a business community, and it's not purely industrial, it's commercial, there's offices, there's shops, and we haven't even gone and done an economic assessment. Now we're hearing from officers saying, well, we're going to get some paymark data. That is not an economic assessment by any means. And it's a bit little, it's too little too late, because what happens is we heard from one business, her lease, she signed a lease till 2026. Now, even in a staged approach, there's very little. She's committed to that lease till 2026, and we only put this network plan in March this year. So people haven't had the time to adjust as many of our officers seem to think they will. And I think that's probably highlights that we really do need to engage with people from more of a business background so that they can show that those type of things. So all these amendments here, the Cameron Street one, is, and that's the residential area, that's offshoot, which leads up to the bridle track. Now, the bridle track is not a proper cycleway even now, and it won't be until major improvements are done. It's basically a walking track, and it's not suitable for cycling. Kenya Street and Crofton Road, the uphill direction, again, we should see how that goes. It's the commuter run for that. And coming from that local community, they would like to see P120 parking along that street during the hours of 9:30 to 4. Kaiwharawhara Road, I don't think we should be determining 2025 changes now. We really do need to see how that cycleway is being implemented and actually make sure then that we take the time to do a proper assessment, both economic and societal. And the final amendment is making sure that we are doing these assessments to inform the changes that we're proposing, because that has been a gaping hole in this whole approach to our transitional cycleways, because that's what they're called, and that's why we're doing it in this way. It's because they are transitional, and so we really do need to have some more information to make sure that we're delivering what the whole of the city wants. I do ask you for your support. I understand Poa Iwi Kelly is going to second to make sure they can get on the table. Thank you.
Okay, cool. I have just checked with our officers and we can ask questions of this. So I would just ask on behalf of all of us, can we have some comment on the suggestions here?
So in terms of Cameron Street, the current proposal doesn't actually involve removing any car parking on the uphill side of Cameron Street. So I'm not sure if that one would have any impact in terms of timing. Kenya Street, this is a similar situation to the Botanic Garden project for those involved. The uphill direction is where that separation is really, really important. So we're looking to build a full-time bike network, not a part-time one, and that's so that people of all kind of ages and abilities, not just commuters coming to and from work, can access it. So that we wouldn't support the Clearway option because we do want to be able to provide that facility for everybody. Anything, do you want to jump in there, Jonathan?
Yes, regarding the option for going up Pickering Street and Upper 4th Street along the bridle track and reviewing that option, that's been reviewed and it's too steep, which is why hardly anyone goes that way. Basically, if you're lost, you might go that way, but otherwise 99% of people don't go that way. They follow the route that we've proposed. Regarding Kenya Street, there is a safety issue with traffic on Kenya Street when cars do park on both sides, and it's quite common for cars to be hit by parked cars to be hit on Kenya Street. So we're trying to improve traffic flows as well as install a cycleway there.
For the kaiwharawhara, for the Amendment K, as I mentioned in my intro, the purpose of the staging is not for the first stage to be assessed to determine the need for the second. We actually need that whole design to be a functioning route, and we don't expect it to be fully successful until it's connected all the way. So we wouldn't want to use stage one as a proof point for stage two, I guess.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions of officers? Yes, Councillor Randall.
Yes, just in regards to item J, how many cyclists go up Noronga Gorge after 9:30 or between 9:30 and in the off-peak hours?
So Noronga or Ngaio Gorge?
Sorry, Ngaio Gorge, yes.
Currently, there are around about 300 cycle trips, and 70% are between 4 and 7 p.m.
Sorry. So
in the evening peak.
So that's
evening.
So how many cyclists go up between 9:30 and 4 p.m. 9:30 in the morning and 4 p.m.
That would be about 20%.
How many is that?
20. That's about 60. And the spread of people cycling heading into town is between 5 a.m. and 7 p.m. Just to give you an idea of how the Clearway may or may not work.
One other thing to note with times of the day is at the moment the commuters that travel are predominantly male and they're often coming to the city. You probably got a sense they're generally a little bit more confident, and it's people that have work patterns that aren't just 9 to 5 that are often the ones that are deterred from the current situation. So we are looking to measure the diversity of users after the facilities are installed, as well as just the numbers, so that we can see if we're attracting different types of people.
Okay, yes, Councillor Chong.
Yes, I'd like to just comment on what you said about the number of cyclists going up in off-peak hours. I have had several meetings with the businesses down there, and I was down there with...
It's meant to be questions, so
sorry,
keep it quick.
Sorry. Okay, I was down there with the business, and the numbers of cyclists that we saw coming past were averaged about 1 to 3 cyclists an hour down that period. And it's very, very quiet in the off-peak hours, and they're the same type of people, same demographic of cyclists going down there. They're business people. They're not.
What's the question, Councillor John?
I would like to query the information that you actually have about the number of cyclists going down in off-peak hours. So I think that if you kept it as a clear way, it would be still preferable.
Okay, that's more of an opinion, I think.
Well, it's just to let you know that a few months ago we installed a cycle counter, an automated counter, and that data is now on the website, so you can track it live, and it's broken down by hour, so you can drill into it that way. That's how we get our data.
Okay, thank you. And we've got a question from Councillor McNulty.
Just on L, this is more of a technical question, but if we were to implement a economic and whole-being social all future plans cycleways, we're passing traffic resolution, so I guess I'm understanding that then binds future traffic resolutions. Is that the appropriate place to make that kind of call? Can we, within a traffic resolution, bind all future traffic resolutions as a point of process?
It's probably more, through you, Madam Chair, a question for the Pānaki Pōneke together in the settings when we go about doing these projects, where the council would have that appetite to do a system-wide impact of cycleways, economic impact. Largest, just to correct some of the comments, and sorry if I'm not clear, Councillor Calvert, but the point I made about the paymark data is that goes up to the research and analytics team upstairs, the economist, and they interpret that and package it into a report back to you, so it's not just the data.
Can I also add that each of these projects does undertake a benefit-cost ratio using a standardised method that we get from Waka Kotahi. So we do have a way to quantify the costs and the benefits, but I think some of what you're maybe looking for is not captured in that method, but we certainly look at the social benefits in terms of health, safety, travel time savings. They're all quantifiable, and we've got a number for that.
Just if I can ask a point of clarification, so there was the last paper on Item Bay, I think you said there would be an annual review or report with the 3 wellbeings addressed. So is that,
that's
so
right.
we expect something like that here at some point?
As this program gains momentum, the report back to council is an annual check-in about how these projects are performing and what those counters are recording, and the other impacts that go with it and measured.
But also being transitional cycleways is the ability to be a little bit more proactive than that as well, if there's...
Yeah, I think Claire's mentioned before, I mean, that the opportunity with transitional is that as these get deployed, we find little tweaks we need to make along the route, and we report those back accordingly.
And we have seen that in operation with...
We have with Newtown.
Newtown. If there are no further questions, I'm going to suggest that we debate the amendment or just go to the vote. One more question, but it has to be a question, not an opinion.
It's a question. Some of the businesses told me that they talked to you about the prospect of using School Road for the cycle lane rather than going up the gorge. And was this actually studied, and did you actually look at the feasibility of that?
Yes, we did take a look at School Road. Unfortunately, it doesn't align with the Hutt Road intersection of the traffic lights, so it wouldn't be safe for people to get to the School Road, and then we'd have to build a bridge at the end of School Road across Kaiwharawhara stream to get back to Kaiwharawhara Road, and building a bridge of that sort's beyond the scope of a transitional project.
Right, well, I'd like to suggest we debate this, these amendments. They've been introduced, they've been seconded. Did the seconder want to have a chance to say something?
Yeah. No, Madam Chair. I actually don't support the amendment, but I did want to give an opportunity for there to be a discussion, given that Councillor Colvert felt so strongly about the matter.
Is there further debate on the amendments? Yes, Councillor Matthews.
Kia ora koutou. I'd just like to encourage you to vote against all of these. I guess that what what happens is if you chip away at cycleways by adding in, especially in this case where the recommendation that's been given is a significant compromise already, and Councillor McNulty kind of pointed out, that already that, some of the advocates are like, this is terrible, that this represents already significant compromise to take into account some of the concerns from businesses and community members. If you continue to then chip away by adding in clearways, adding in car parks, delaying implementation, you end up with nothing. And I guess that's what I would see as the intention of these amendments, given that they're moved by a councillor who has continuously voted against this program.
Not necessary, thank you. Yeah. But anyway, you've made your point.
It's and I guess that given that you would have nothing left, that I would encourage you to vote against all of these, given the significant compromises already been made as part of the process. And I guess I would just add with the economic assessment question, all of the advice that we have had through this process of pāneke pōneke and the individual traffic resolutions is that the impact on business is neutral to positive. So there is a difference between not having information that we require in order to make these decisions and not agreeing with the outcome. And that we will, this iterative process, which is designed for us to continue to be able to make tweaks and adjustments as we go, as we have already seen in Newtown. And I do think there's an important point to be made. I don't think that actually there was anything problematic about what I said about that if amendments to chip away at cycleways are made by councillors who have opposed them, you do have to look at what is the intent. And with pāneke pōneke and with this, the intent is to provide safe options for more residents, more travel choices, to reduce our emissions, and that is all achieved by the proposal as put by officers. Thank you.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I'm going to ask if anyone would like to speak for this amendment, apart from the mover, of course. Oh, no, you have the right to speak and to influence other people's thoughts. Is there anyone who would like to speak for or against? I don't think so. So let's maybe put this to the vote. Okay, let's put it. Okay, Ray, you may. That's true. So, Ray, you may speak to this if you wish. Please.
Thank you.
Reasonably brief.
Thank you. In my discussions with the businesses down there, it seems very clear to me that 80% of the businesses that I spoke to are against this because they do not agree that this would actually have a positive or a neutral effect on their businesses. When they look at the people that actually shop there, they always take their shopping away in cars. They can't carry them away. They can't carry bits of furniture away on the back of a bicycle, and they feel that it's just too far for these people, these customers, to actually carry their goods up to where they can find a car park.
All right. Would you like I don't think there's any other debaters there, so would you like a right of reply? Yeah, there you go.
And as a councillor who was on board when we did the Hutt Road cycleway, I can say that one of the reasons it was successful is we worked hard with the businesses and we got agreement in terms of the clearway, the timing of the clearway, and that. And so that was one of the key reasons for the success of that. And I know because I was part of it. These amendments are being brought by are being led by the community, and I think it's really important that whilst we've had the Bike Network provide their economic views, they actually are not from qualified economic folk. We've had a selection of some reports, but actually what we haven't had is our research and evaluation team involved in this. Only now is the council getting their independent research and evaluation team involved in doing some of the economic assessment work afterwards, not beforehand, not during it, not providing advice even in terms of how some of the questions are posed. So it is very much focused on a particular viewpoint, and that's where, as a councillor, all the way through, what I have tried to do is try and get that sort of win-win approach, that compromise. If that seems to be chipping away at a proposal, then so be it. But it's not. It's actually trying to get something through properly. And if we really are serious about carbon reduction, we would be putting a lot more focus in on our buses, because actually that's going to get more people moving differently. And yet what we're doing is just for, perhaps potentially 60 to 100 people, provide a huge upheaval on a large range of our residents and our businesses who are actually funding a lot of the stuff that we're doing around the city. So, an iterative process is good. It's about evolutionary rather than revolutionary. And really what we need to do is to take this in stages. But agreeing on a further stage right at this moment, I think is running before we can walk. And so really, in the spirit of cooperation with our community, I think what we do need to do is to put the second phase on hold. And I believe there has been compromise, but there's more conversations needed to be had. So these, the cycleway will still go through, but these are suggestions for improvements to make it better for everyone in the local community that are being impacted by this. So I look forward to your support. And I'd like to take if anybody wants to have them separately, that's fine, but I would like a division. Thank you.
Do we need to take them separately? No, I don't see anyone want to take them separately. So we'll put them collectively to the vote. So vote 1 if you agree, vote 2 if you don't. And this is just the amendment. And then we'll go back to the substantive with the amendment either included or not included. And that has failed. So we now return to a speaking list for the main. I don't think there are any other amendments. So we'll return to the main thrust of the paper. And is there anyone who'd like to speak? I probably will very quickly, but it will be quick. We're in debate on the substantive. Okay, Liz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I do want to speak to this, given that I don't think I justified myself well with just seconding and not speaking to it. I guess for me, I felt that young mum, I forget her name, with her Pepe that came in, I think that I believe she helped me get some sort of perspective on what was being asked, and helped me in my own mind, because we have heard a variety of views in support and against, and against seems to be more in line with the businesses, until we received an email this morning or a text or something from a cyclist who had an accident this morning and was coming down the hill, was too fast, and there were things that were in the way. So I'm really confident now to support this. I think that it goes a long way to addressing some health and safety issues that we have, as well as establishing our direction, what the council has agreed our direction is. I'd just like to speak to the point about people using cars. I love my car. I'm up front with that. I love my car. And I do want to speak to, he's gone now about how people who go and purchase things in kaiwharawhara, they use their car to take those purchases away, and that's because of the kind of business that's in that area. So, but I do believe, though, that council has provided spaces for the customer to be able to park do their business, take their purchases away with them. Because if we were going to take out all of the car parks, I would not be supporting this, because people actually drive there to do their business, so they do need to take them away unless it's going to be delivered to them. But anyway, I support this. I'm not as familiar with the area as those that live in it, only what I purchase when I go to Kaiwharawhara, and I'm just saying that I feel confident now after hearing the submissions, and last week as well, when I wasn't well, I still listened in to some of the submissions, and I feel confident that the council is making the right decision here.
I'll just very quickly speak. I didn't speak to the amendment, but I'll cover off just some thoughts about that as well. We have got a very bold vision here, and if we're to deliver on this, we have to be quite staunch, because we are going to hear backlash against it. I also can see that it's a compromise, and I'm comforted by that, because we have to be realistic about allowing people to still carry on their business while we do make these very radical changes. What I experienced on the Hutt Road was we sent a very clear signal. Basically, we had that terrible accident, that doctor that comes to speak to us, David Tripp, he nearly died. He fractured his spine. He showed us the x-rays, and I said to him, I apologise to you on behalf of council, and I'll do everything I can to make sure that we fix this. And so I was quite staunch. I went down to all the businesses. I said, this is happening. And they did adjust. It does take a little bit of time, but businesses adjust. And that's why, even though I understand the argument that we could delay making the second stage decision until we've seen how the first stage works out, I actually think that's not fair. We do need to send a very clear signal here to businesses, so they are in no doubt about the fact that they have to adjust, and they will adjust. There is more. Thank you, Councillor McNulty, for pointing out there is actually parking that's not being used. That if businesses get together and work out how they can do better with what they've got, and that's what a lot of them down the Hutt Road did. They actually adjusted, and they shared, and they made new parking spaces. They worked out. Some businesses may have had to move, but I don't think there were very many, if any. So unfortunately, we're not in control of the buses right now, and this is the bit we are in control of. We can provide this choice and this option for people, and we hope that because we are taking out car parking and doing what we can about climate change, that the regional council will also sort out things they have to sort out, which only they can sort out, unfortunately. Believe me, if I can wave a magic wand, I came onto council wanting to wave a magic wand on the buses, and I know Tony did as well. There's only so much we can do. This is the bit we are in control of, that we can actually transform our city with. Didn't vote for the amendments. I could see where they were coming from, but I didn't support them. But I will be supporting the main thrust of this paper. Are there any other speakers? Yep. Councillor, you may speak.
Thank you. It was interesting, the David Tripp accident, which was actually, it wasn't involvement with a car or anything like that. It was actually a pole that had been cut off and left by council. So I think we just need to be really careful about how we are presenting information and what might be the causes or the impacts in that, because that was the issue in terms of that particular accident. And so look, obviously, I put my amendments through. I'm disappointed that they didn't get through. I think that's where we need to make sure that this is a debating table, and we need to make sure that we hear all views and with respect, and appreciate that often our views aren't personal. We are actually representing our communities as well and giving them a voice at this table, which is why we've been elected. So I think we need to make sure that we do support that as well. And we do listen, and we find better ways to listening. We've, Chair, you made a comment about Hutt Road and didn't know which businesses may have changed or moved. And that's one of the issues that I'm trying to raise is we do this work, but we don't understand the impacts. We don't assess. Wouldn't it be great if we had done an assessment and we could say, look, businesses adapted. They adapted. It took them 5 years to adapt, or it took them 2 years to adapt, or this is what happened, but we don't know. So we're often making decisions. Sometimes we have some information, information, but we're in a vacuum of other information. So I will be looking at which ones I will be supporting of these, but I just hope that everyone enables respect around this table to hear all views and make sure that our communities are represented. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert. We're certainly trying to do that. Now, the seconder reserved her right. Do you wish to speak, seconder? You don't? Right of reply to the... Is there anyone else? No? Right of reply to you, Councillor McNulty,
Cool.
if you want it.
Yeah, kia ora. Let's just do it quickly. Look, I'll thank Diane actually for... She has a valid... There's a view of there are constituents in your ward and they do hold those opinions and they hold them dearly, and you've expressed that, and that's absolutely proper that we do hear that. I'll just go for a few technical things. So yeah, Ngaio Union Church has been talked about. We have 18 car parks at that facility, and I believe that church actually can start to look at managing those on a priority basis. I'm just going to go through here. Yeah, we've talked about the amendments and come through. I think, yeah, Akane, who spoke to us, really sticks out this morning, and that this is something for her. I can definitely say, as a young dad myself, when I'm at home and it's a dad day, I'm not on 9 to 5 hours, that we do need to look at these cycleways beyond just being about peak hour commuting. People aren't all monoliths, and we all do have our own travelling ways, and that's why it's so important that we actually build the correct infrastructure. Liz actually touched on, we received a photo this morning from a crash on Kenya Street, and it's not actually something that this proposal would mitigate, but that goes to show just how middle of the road that we've come to in this decision. It really is a very middle of the road one that could go further. I'd support it going further, but I also support bringing the community with us. Spoke to a journalist yesterday and saw some parallels there, and he said, look, if no one's particularly happy with you, then you're probably getting around the best outcome, and that seems to feel about where we've landed here in terms of this. I'd personally love it to go further, but I think this is a fantastic start. Working with our e-bike trial, it will enable those things, and I'm pretty confident, you know, in 3, 6, 9 years' time, there'll be another meeting at this table, and we'll be looking at how we actually enable and take this to the next stage from the uptake. So thank everyone for their contributions, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Let's put it to the vote. Now, what did you want to take separately, if anything, Councillor Calvert?
I would like to take 4A separately, and you just keep scrolling down because I haven't got my it's gone off screen. And I will probably vote against number 5.
Okay.
Yep. And 5, thank you.
Okay, so we'll do 4A and 5 now, and then we'll do the rest. So 4A is to remove the middle stage. So we wouldn't go ahead with stage. Well, you're voting against.
I'm basically voting against the second stage.
And then 5 was adopting the traffic resolution. Yeah. So we're voting on those two things now. So green if you agree. Red if you don't.
One of the few times I'm red.
You're such a green.
I know, I am.
Alrighty, so... Oh, did you make a mistake, Nuridan?
Thanks, Nuridan.
It was that red. So that was voted in error, I presume, Councillor, and we will correct it. So we'll now take the rest.
So did we do? Yeah.
So this is everything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that passes unanimously. Wonderful. Right, we've got one more paper and then the actions tracking and the forward program. So we can do it. Aro Valley. Claire, are you back to give us a quick introduction to this? Yes.
Kia ora. Back again. So Ara Valley, we just wanted to intro this one. It's a bit different than the Ngaio project. Ara Valley is an awesome, vibrant community with some of the most sustainable travel patterns in Wellington. And as you will have heard at the oral submissions, people who live there are part of the solution and not part of the problem. Given how densely residential and close to the city the suburb is, we've tried to tailor this project to reflect that context. So with good access to car share and safe, convenient transport options, we think Ara Valley is somewhere where it could be really easy for most people, not everyone, to live without a car or to live with just one car. Given that, we wanted to take a broader approach to this area than just biking. Yes, we want to put in an uphill bike lane because, as you heard, it's scary at the moment and very off-putting, riding up Ardell Street with a wall of parked cars on the left and no space for people on bikes. But we also wanted to bring speeds down for more of the valley and support car sharing to become really commonplace by conveniently locating both a car and a van in the middle of the Aro community. And we want to make it safer to walk in the area with raised pedestrian crossings. So citywide parking changes that will come to Council for consideration next year are also going to build on this wider picture with new ways of prioritising residents' parking to ensure those that need it have first dibs on it. While we do already have permits and coupons for tradespeople and for carers to access residents' parking, the parking team are also looking at how to make access for these groups even easier. So there's a much bigger picture at play here than just these changes. Again, we think this design's a big step forward, but we acknowledge that there are impacts of this project. And actually, in this area, the predominant impact is on commuters who come to this area to park all day. We don't think this is the best use of this really precious street space, which is why you'll see these proposals changing a lot of commuter parking to residents parking. Again, there's really strong support in the community for these changes, with about 70% of submissions either in support or in strong support. Johnny and Jonathan, he's been a busy man, have spent a lot of time in this area, again, hearing concerns and incorporating many of the changes into the plans, including one as recent as last week, which came from further discussion with Aro Cafe and a few other businesses, with a really good win-win outside the Aro Caf. So if approved today, we'd look forward to installing some of the project in the second quarter of next year, again starting late March, and then following some more consultation for the Rara Road parking changes, the rest of the project early in 2024. So together we think these will make significant improvements in transport choices for the Aro area.
Thank you. Now, are there questions? No, it's as clear as anything. Right, well, I'm going to move straight to Tam, who's going to move the paper for us.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so I just want to begin by actually acknowledging the Chair and Deputy Chair, Councillor Free and Councillor McNulty, for being really proactive with the way that you've moved through and, making sure that we're all well acquainted with the Aro and the Ngaio networks and keeping us up to date with what changes have been made to the paper. I've definitely really appreciated it as a member of this committee, so thank you. And like you said, Councillor Free, we really have to be staunch, and I feel like that's great leadership on your part. I want to acknowledge the officers as well for their extensive consultation with the community, having gone to a couple of the events, and I feel like you really went above and beyond with the consultation on this one, particularly with the Micromobility Fest, which I think is a really awesome model of engaging with the community. So Aro Valley is my hood. I live there, spend a lot of time there. There are a lot of cyclists, a mix of commuter cyclists and people using the BMX tracks at the Waimapahi Reserve. I probably door-knocked the whole suburb maybe twice during the campaign period, and I think for most people what I was hearing is they want greater bus efficiency. When you talk to most people, they either walk to work or they want the 25 to be more reliable and more efficient, and I'm really confident that the changes that are proposed here are going to make the buses a lot more efficient, because you're not going to have two buses trying to share what is a really narrow road, so I think that's a real plus for everybody living there. I also wanted to know, maybe for some of the new councillors, that the thing that makes this team of officers unique is that you actually get really good options analysis in this paper. So you've got really good exploration of what you might be able to do as a councillor if you want this project to move faster or if you want it to move slower. And you don't get that in other papers. I don't think you get that level of analysis. I also don't think you get this level of compromise. I feel like it's pretty obvious that officers have worked really hard to find compromise that works for everybody, no matter what they feel about the cycleway network. So, yeah, you'll get to know that over the term, and I think you'll come to really appreciate the hard work of the team. So that's basically it. I just wanted to acknowledge really quickly that there's a couple amendments that are coming with the papers that have officer support. One looks to shorten the period between stage 1 and stage 2. And another one, if it's incorporated in there, is around Epuni Street.
Yeah, thank you.
So when I was talking to people down Epuni Street during the campaign, and a long kind of bugbear of mine is that Epuni Street is incorrectly named. There's no Epuni, it's Te Puni. He's a rangatira of Taranaki Whānui. So hoping that, given that this committee deals with street names and correcting those, that we might be able to begin investigating correcting that. And I know that there's support for that down that street too. So yeah, that's that, and keen to hear the debate.
Thank you. And I think, who am I offering getting to second this? I'm happy to second it, actually. But I don't need to speak. I've done quite a lot of speaking. Is there, oh, no, okay, so we've got a speaking list. So Councillor Pannett, and just let me know, we have, yep, Councillor Pannett.
Thanks. So, look, I'll be brief, but I just do want to say thanks to officers for their enormous amount of work that they've put into this important project. I remain committed to building a network, and that's what we need to do. This is seen as a commuter street, and it shouldn't be. To the good residents of Karori, you're great, but there's a lot of you coming through and making this beautiful, amazing area quite hostile, and that's not safe for many road users. And look, I acknowledge the compromises that have been made. Some of these I wouldn't be supportive of, actually. You know, I'm quite hardcore. So, you know, but anyway, I'll suck that one up. I do just want to reflect a view, though, of some of my constituents who have raised concerns, and they are committed environmentalists. They're not people opposed to taking action. And they have said, look, don't punish us because we are already doing, you know, we're not using our cars that much, but it's basically storage space. And there are people that feel that we haven't done enough to keep pedestrians safe. So I guess I just want to give that feedback. We'll keep working on that because this should absolutely be a walkable area. The speed limit extension is welcome, but let's get it across the whole suburb because, which is of course what we agreed, at least in principle, to do last triennium. And the last point, look, I grew up 10 minutes walk from here. This is not a suburb that can say that we can be car-free, that can't be car-free. You can. It's really quite simple. But I do just want to say to officers, my question wasn't exactly answered. My point was, it's not enough just to tell people that these are the benefits of being car-free, but providing solutions to their legitimate concerns when they say, hey, got to get to the hospital at 3 o'clock in the morning, or I'm a shift worker, or I've got relatives to care for. There's a whole lot of legitimate reasons, and I would like us to come to the table with some of those solutions to help them so that we can live car-free, and I can assure you that you can, but we do need to provide some support around that to make it easy for people to do the right thing. But kia ora, everyone. I'm sure this is going to go through. Thanks for all the great work.
Right, are there any other speakers? Yes, Councillor Calvert. Oh, sorry, actually, sorry, I've missed Hawiwi. Oh, are you sure? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Calvert.
Thank you. I'm sure it was a slip of the tongue when officers just said this is different in Nio, then went on to say how awesome the suburb was and not part of the problem. So okay, that's all right. And it won't come as a surprise, but I do look at these papers and I don't prejudge and I don't come from a particular viewpoint. The only viewpoint I come from is actually listening to communities and making sure that everyone is given a voice and is heard. And so I'm pretty staunch about that. And that's one thing Councillor Paul and I have in common, and our staunchness on different things. So I am going to support these because I haven't heard from the local councillors that I know in this area are supporting it. I haven't heard a groundswell of people really against it, unlike Nio. So I will be supporting these because of that. I'd just like to make a comment about the analysis that's been done around from officers, and I acknowledge the analysis that's come from this team. But this team is a pretty big team, and I would really like to see that we do in all our work around council that we have. We share the love in terms of making sure that quality of analysis or the intensity of the analysis applies to lots of other things. And dare I mention buses again, because that's really going to be important, and that's what's going to get us the mode shift that we need. So yes, so as I said, I listened to the submissions last week, and I have a lot of empathy for them, but essentially the local councillors are supportive, and I haven't had any feedback since last week on these matters.
Are there other people? Yeah, Councillor McNulty, then Councillor Abdurrahman.
Kia ora. I just want to actually pick up from public submissions, and I suppose a request of council and their communication. So I'm very broadly supportive of this, but it's important to listen that there were some concerns that were raised around mobility parking or residence parking, tradies and the like. So we've clarified that there are mobility parking coupons available. There's a large conversion of residence parking in the proposal. There will be a DHB carers coupon available next year, is my understanding, and there is a tradies coupon. And I think that is not always well communicated. It was news to me. And I mean, I did do Uber Eats driving and have my own loading zone permit around here a few years ago. So I feel maybe I'm a little bit closer to parking regulations than the average Joe. And this was still news to me. So I just ask that council, when we do this, do communicate or think about how they communicate that these exemptions are out there, because it can be quite confronting for a resident to think, actually, my carer is not going to be able to get here, full stop, ever again. And actually, there are options on the table. We just might not always put it forward through. So, brilliant proposal. Just a request of how we make sure people are reassured, and very happy to support this great piece of work.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Councillor Abdurrahman? No, you're okay. Just very quickly, I think that was very good points that you've made there. The three things that I picked up from 8 hours of submissions that stood out for me on this project were access worries for trades, visitors, carers, and removals, that sort of thing. The speed through Aro Park and pedestrian safety, and third thing was just the support for slower speeds. And I think we've slightly extended the slower speed zone. I would have potentially liked to have seen it extended a bit more, but I've been convinced that by staff that the engineering isn't there at the minute to support that, and we can look at that as in a bigger context when we get our speed management rule sorted out. That there have been some measures put in to make sure cyclists don't speed through the Aro Park, the green space there, and that, as you've covered off so well, that there have been the parking changes to try and address some of residents' concerns. And the other thing about parking changes is they're not set in concrete, so you can keep reviewing those. They just have to come again to this committee if we decide that the changes we've made are not quite fit for purpose. I'm very comfortable with this project. I'm heartened that the Ward Councillor was so eager to introduce it, so that gives me confidence as well. So if there's nothing further there's a right of reply to the mover.
Well, I was going to just respond to some of those points that Councillor Pennant raised about providing legitimate solutions for people to move around, but I do feel like those are covered off pretty well by Councillor McNulty and yourself around the various parking schemes and the mobility parking, and also just to highlight that the team's been working with Mevo as well and with car share, because that reduces household car ownership. So I feel like that's also a really important part of the solution. So I do feel like there has been really thorough analysis of providing other solutions to people who live in Idle Valley to get around without their own personal car. So yeah.
We'll go to the vote. Is anyone watching anything separately? No? Away we go. And that's unanimous. So a big thank you to the staff for that. Well done. Right, so we very quickly now are just going to...
Sorry, will that be recorded unanimous, or do we need a division? Or it just gets passed?
Well,
Can we record that as...
Unanimous,
Yeah, thank
yep.
you. If I vote for them, I want it recorded, and if I don't vote for them, I want it recorded.
All right. Good point. Now, we just have a couple of minor things left to do, and that's the forward program and the actions tracking. Are we happy to take them as read? Are there any questions? I think we're happy to take them as read. So I'm just, without further ado, do I have a seconder for those? Yes, good on, Liz. Okay. Thank you, Pauiwi Liz. And with that, I'm actually just going to put them to the vote. And we may even just about finish on time. Just. Mayor Whānau, yours hasn't registered. Oh, sorry. Yeah. And again, you can record that as unanimous if you want to, though nobody probably cares. Right, well, thank you, everybody. So we've come to the end of our business. And thank you for everybody's really constructive participation, including the people who've come, who aren't strictly speaking members, but have come out of interest and dedication. So thank you to everyone, and thank you, of course, to the officers. Right, we will close with the karakia. Holden, is it appropriate for me to stand? Yeah, okay, stand, and the rest of you can say it's seated. All righty, so una hia, ki te uru tapanui, te wātia, ki mama, te nāko, te tinana, te wairua, I te ara takatu. Rā I rongo, ki runga, kia wātia, aia rā, kua wātia. And I declare